What's new, crew? If you're new, my name's Cassandra. If you're not, welcome back. Today I'm going to be sharing with you guys a couple tips and tricks on how to save you money on your grocery budget heading into 2022. Let's hop. The afternoon coffee is strong today, but let's start with the first tip, which, please, if you've been watching my channel for any period of time, this one is not going to be a surprise to you. Can we please just start a meal plan? Make 2022 be the year where you meal plan, whether it be a week at a time, 2 weeks at a time, or if you're like me and you're crazy, you do a month at a time for those once a month grocery shopping hauls. Just start with a meal plan. If you're brand new to meal planning, maybe a week or 2 weeks seems like a lot, but I promise you, after you get going and you start doing it, you're gonna wonder how you ever functioned without one. This is the biggest way I save money, hands down, because when I'm grocery shopping, I have my meal plan, I have my grocery list, and I know exactly how much I need. This cuts out all those random trips to the grocery store for 1 or 2 items that subsequently, like Oreos, end up in my cart, or fruit punch ends up in my cart, or maybe Diet Coke ends up in my cart or something. Cutting out those extra grocery runs saves me a lot of money. If you need some meal planning inspiration or just how to start a meal plan, I will link down below an entire playlist on every single meal plan I have done over the course of 2021. I sat down with you almost every single month last year and shared with you guys my meal plans, so theoretically there should be 365 meals throughout those playlists. Plus I will link some videos on how I started, some other tips and tricks specifically to meal planning. That should be your go-to guide if you're needing some help. The next one is shop the sales, but there's a cliff notes to this one. Only the things that you actually need. It doesn't matter how good of a deal it is. If you're never gonna use it, you're never gonna cook with it, you're never gonna eat it, then that deal is not meant for you. It is meant for somebody else. I've learned that one the hard way. I think we all have. Through the whole 2019, 2020, everybody was panic shopping, and I saw so many people talking about how they bought things that they never eat just because they thought they might need it. That's a mistake I think we all make once or twice. Just make sure if you're shopping the sales, it's things that you're actually going to need, things that you're actually going to use, things that you love. Or if you're like me, I like to use those sales to sometimes try things that I've been wanting to try, but I wasn't really sure if my family was going to like them. I did that with a tikka masala sauce that I bought from Aldi. Usually they sit around that $4 or $5 mark for a jar. They were on sale for $1.99, so I bought a jar and I still haven't used it, but I bought it and it is sitting down my storage shelf waiting to be used. This leads me right into the next one, which is shopping the clearance racks. I know specifically at Walmart, after the holidays, they will have racks and racks of their holiday baked goods marked down significantly. All of those things that come out of the bakery freeze really, really well. I know Christmas is now over, but the next big holiday coming up is Valentine's Day. I know my Walmart makes these really cute little heart-shaped donuts. I always pick them up for my kids. I think they're just super fun. After Valentine's Day is over, the next day I will head into Walmart and I'm gonna shop those clearance racks. Maybe I'll bring you guys with me for that. And I'm going to be buying 2 or 3 boxes of those heart-shaped donuts and putting them down in my freezer for my kids to enjoy throughout the next couple of months. Even if I'm only saving 75 cents or $1 on every box, it's still just a little bit of savings and something fun for my kids and maybe even for myself to have for a later date. I also do this with breads, rolls, all the things. If I ever want a specific fresh bread, if I'm not making it myself, I will go to the clearance racks first and shop the clearance racks before I go over to the bakery and look over at the bakery, because a lot of times I can find exactly what I'm looking for on a clearance shelf or something super similar that I can make work. I will do the exact same thing when Easter rolls around coming up. I will wait until the Monday after Easter. I will go into Walmart or whatever store, Sam's Club, whatever your go-to store is. I'm gonna walk down those aisles and buy some of my favorite Easter candies. Chocolate freezes super well, those little Kinder eggs. If you really like those, or your kids, you can grab those, throw them in your freezer, and you bought them for 75 cents a bag, and you can just enjoy them throughout the year. I will do that with the Reese's Easter eggs. Those are my favorite, hands down. Above the Christmas trees, everything, those Easter eggs are my favorite. I will buy a couple of those, put them in the freezer, and I like to enjoy mine frozen, just personal preference. But though that is another thing that I will do come Easter time. I'll do the same thing with all the holidays, every single one. The next tip I would have for you to save money heading into 2022 is to buy in bulk. I think this is something a ton of people started doing over the course of 2019, 2020, but there is some other tips underneath that, like the cliff notes of that tip. Only buy what you can store properly. There's no reason to buy a ton of pancake mix if you can't store it properly, or a bunch of flour if you have nowhere to store it, because then you're just wasting. And so I would say before you buy in bulk, make sure that you also have containers that can hold it, or pails, whatever you're going to do. Make sure you find out your storage solution, where you're gonna store it, all those things. I would also maybe do a little bit of quick research on how things store, especially when it comes to things like if you're buying potatoes in bulk, onions in bulk, finding out how they store the longest. If you store them in a cold and dark place, it just keeps them from sprouting. So that's a good tip. Also learning that onions and potatoes should not be stored together. Things like that. Also, if you're buying more like flour, salt, sugar, all those things, making sure you do have those containers like I mentioned, because if you don't have a proper way to store them, sometimes you get home and you go, okay, now what am I gonna do with this 50-pound bag of flour? I've definitely been there. Learn how to grow your own food. Heading into 2022, I plan on doing way more garden videos. We are very excited about putting in a half-acre garden. That's a rough estimate. It might be a little smaller, it might be a little bigger out here on our property. I have a personal goal to grow, I'm gonna say 85 to 90% of our own vegetables here on our property, which is something I'm super excited about, like really excited about. So make sure you subscribe if you wanna see more garden videos, preserving videos, things like that, because that's definitely coming in 2022. But I would definitely recommend doing that. Even, it does not have to be anything that big. Over the last 5 years, we went from having just little pots that we kept out on our back deck when we were back at Fort Drum, because that's all we were allowed to do. We've also went from container gardens. Then the last couple of years, we had a smaller garden out in our yard, just like a 10 by 10, and then it expanded to 10 by 20 and like 30 by 40. If you have no experience, but it is really easy to grow things like peppers and tomatoes. Those are great starters. I would say definitely learning how to grow your own food and making sure that you're growing things that you're actually going to eat. Right along with growing your own food, I would say make sure you know how to preserve it properly. This kind of goes back to buying in bulk. There's no reason to grow a ton of food and a lot of extras if you don't know how to preserve it. I think the more common thread for people is that they enjoy their garden in the summer while it's fresh, and then once it dies out, they just let it die, which is totally fine. I want to enjoy the fruit of my labor all year, because gardening is a lot of work. It really is. So learning how to preserve all that extra food and making sure that I'm using absolutely everything I'm growing and not wasting and all of those things. Last year I showed you guys how I preserved my broccoli. Lots of different things I've learned over the last couple of years while I've kind of developed and furthered my knowledge on this topic. I still have a lot of learning, but making sure that you are learning how to preserve your food and different things like that. I find that I like blanching and freezing a lot better than canning. And also you learn by experience, and I've learned that there are certain things I do like to can, like my carrots, and I like to can sauerkraut. I like to can my celery and my carrots together to make a really easy soup. And at the same time, there are other things that I could can that I prefer to freeze, like my green beans. That might also mean that you have to invest in certain equipment. Like last year, I bought a really nice, really big 24-quart water bath. So nice. It was a great investment. This might mean that you are investing in a vacuum sealer, which is something that we're probably going to invest in. So just making sure that you have the right equipment and the correct knowledge on how to preserve things that you're growing, because you don't want to spend all that time growing food and then not preserving it properly and having it either get freezer burnt or finding out that you canned it wrong and you can't eat it. Let me tell you, popping the seal on 30 jars of carrots that you learned that you canned incorrectly and having to dump them out really blows, because every time I popped a seal, I just thought about all that time I wasted growing, harvesting, and prepping these carrots. So definitely make sure that you know what you're doing before you do it. The next one is a little bit more basic and I think applies to everybody, is finding budget meals that you think are delicious. Not your neighbor, not your mom, not your best friend, things that you actually like to eat that are really budget friendly. My last tip is going to be learning to cook from scratch. This is something I have improved on vastly over the last 1.5 to 2 years. We cook a lot of things in-house, whether that be breads, rolls, croissants. I am trying to learn how to make pretzels right now. Once I perfect that recipe will definitely be coming. I've learned how to make donuts. I've learned how to make pie crusts, torts, all sorts of different things. And then on top of that, all the basics. We make all of our cookies in-house. I don't buy them anymore. Brownies, muffins, we make all of that in-house. I don't buy the boxes anymore, which saves us a lot of money, especially because we rely heavily on those for snacks for our children. And that alone has saved me so much money at the grocery store over the last year. I also learned how to make my own pizza crusts, which saved me a lot because we do homemade pizzas about once a week now because my kids love them. They love getting involved in making the crusts. And that's another thing that's really special because I am a stay-at-home mom. I have 2 of my kids home with me during the day. They're also learning and really being able to be really comfortable in the kitchen, and that's something that's just another bonus for me. But definitely learning how to just make some things from scratch. I know I rattled off a ton of different things, but I learned how to make all those over the course of 1.5 or 2 years. It's not like I just woke up one morning, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna learn how to make bread today, and I'm also gonna learn how to make pretzels, and I'm also gonna learn how to make really nice cookies. It took time. I worked on one thing at a time. We bake in our house on average about once a week. Sometimes it's more than that. So I had a lot of practice, and things definitely still aren't perfect. My pie crusts are really hit or miss still. So I do keep a backup pie crust in my freezer just in case, because sometimes it just does not work out the way you want it to. It's basically like you meal prepped, and really all you did was take your leftovers that all you were gonna do was throw away and put them in the freezer. My last tip is going to be learning to cook from scratch. This is something I have improved on vastly over the last 1.5 to 2 years. We cook a lot of things in-house, whether that be breads, rolls, croissants. I am trying to learn how to make pretzels right now. Once I perfect that recipe will definitely be coming. I've learned how to make donuts. I've learned how to make pie crusts, torts, all sorts of different things. And then on top of that, all the basics. We make all of our cookies in-house. I don't buy them anymore. Brownies, muffins, we make all of that in-house. I don't buy the boxes anymore, which saves us a lot of money, especially because we rely heavily on those for snacks for our children. And that alone has saved me so much money at the grocery store over the last year. I also learned how to make my own pizza crusts, which saved me a lot because we do homemade pizzas about once a week now because my kids love them. They love getting involved in making the crusts. And that's another thing that's really special because I am a stay-at-home mom. I have 2 of my kids home with me during the day. They're also learning and really being able to be really comfortable in the kitchen, and that's something that's just another bonus for me. But definitely learning how to just make some things from scratch. I know I rattled off a ton of different things, but I learned how to make all those over the course of 1.5 or 2 years. It's not like I just woke up one morning, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna learn how to make bread today, and I'm also gonna learn how to make pretzels, and I'm also gonna learn how to make really nice cookies. It took time. I worked on one thing at a time. We bake in our house on average about once a week. Sometimes it's more than that. So I had a lot of practice, and things definitely still aren't perfect. My pie crusts are really hit or miss still. So I do keep a backup pie crust in my freezer just in case, because sometimes it just does not work out the way you want it to. Utilize your leftovers. You guys, your leftovers did nothing to you. Don't throw them away. Please don't. I will link a video down below that I did that is all about how to freeze your leftovers, so you don't even have to eat them right away. You can freeze them and pull them back out a couple weeks from now and enjoy them later. Leftovers are such a great way to save you money, and you only have to cook it once. A lot of the times, especially if you're freezing leftovers, it's like you have pre-made freezer meals that you didn't pay $12 for in the freezer section. And then you just pull them out and you're reheating them in your oven. Or a lot of the times I'll freeze soup in sandwich-sized bags or in big gallon-sized Ziplocs. And then all I have to do is take that bag of soup, dump it in my soup pot, and I'm reheating it. I don't even have to chop anything, and I have beautiful homemade soup. And just like that, those are all of my tips and tricks to try to save you guys a ton of money on your grocery budget heading into 2022. Let me know down below if any of these tips you are going to be applying to yourself heading in this year. And of course, I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.